Hey, what's up?
Good
Thanks for
morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining in, everybody. My name is Ben Smithee. I'm the Chief Relationship Officer here at NextAfter, and I'm joined with my good friend Nathan Hill, who is the VP of Training from AVID. And we have a ton of great information to share today regarding recurring giving. And so we're going to do things in a couple different ways here. Um, First of all, we'll make sure that we can get you all the information that we share, so don't feel like you have to take screenshots of everything that we do, or feel free to and take notes on everything. But we'll make sure that the information is available to you. We have some cool offers to download stuff at the end. But here's how we're going to do this. We're going to kick it off. I'm going to have Nathan talk about kind of the state of the union, like what the heck is going on in donor world when it comes to fundraising and donations and recurring giving and all that good stuff. He's got some great data from AVID, from client data, from all these things in the world of what's going on in the state of fundraising, specifically around recurring today. Then we're going to jump in next after we just wrapped up our annual study on recurring giving that we just launched at Neo Summit this year, that talks about sort of what we saw when we actually went in and became donors to roughly 140 organizations. And we'll see some data of what we actually experienced as donors, the good, the bad, the ugly, the otherwise. And then we'll wrap up, obviously, in the next after an AVID way of giving you data, tests, things to try, and ways that you can actually do something with this information versus just here's a data dump on top of you. So, Nathan, good to see you, brother.
Good to see
Um,
you. Yeah, thrilled to be with you guys.
yeah, thanks for joining. And let's kick it off with what the heck is going on in the world of um, fundraising, recurring, and also we'll make sure to hear some time on like what the heck is going on with Avid these days and new and exciting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of actually concerning trends, as you've probably seen. So we'll get into those too. But it's not all doom and gloom. There's some opportunities, and that's why we're here. If everything was perfect and rosy, then we wouldn't need this webinar to talk about how we grow and how we scale. So just a touch on Avid. My name is Nathan Hill. I oversee all things training related at Avid. We are the fundraising operating system. What that means in a nutshell is we sit on top of your tech stack to go connect all of your various systems, bring all of those disparate fundraising tools that never like to talk to each other. Let's put them all under one roof so we can see really truly what's going on and bring
Why
intelligence
would we want to do that, Nathan?
for so many reasons. And the primary one, just reduce headaches and save you time and allow you to get like proper sleep at night. But also beyond that, to help you spot where are the opportunities, where are the trends, what are the problems creeping in, and then ultimately we help you then go run the plays. What do you do about this stuff to actually start to move the needle in really practical ways without adding a bunch of headcount and a bunch of budget and a bunch of resources to your team, but to do it all from a singular operating system. So we can share more about that as we go. I will put this up here just for anyone jumping in. We are offering a free year-end campaign, which sounds maybe unbelievable, but we want to show you the power of Avid as it relates to how it can help you build plays in campaigns. And so if you go to avidai.com/launch-lab or scan that QR code, you can apply for a time to spend 30 minutes with someone on the Avid team, and we'll walk you through actually building a whole campaign. You will walk away with a full copy document with every touch point for every channel, with all of your key segments, all built for you in 30 minutes. So that sounds unbelievable, and it's pretty remarkable. So go to avidai.com/launch-lab, and we'll hook you up. So let's dive into some of the data. So the universe that we're looking at in terms of these kind of overall trends is about 100. I think just this morning I checked the numbers, 134 organizations, and so we're looking at live data. We're pulling in data from the actual sources of truth every single day, updating that data, normalizing it across all these different organizations so we can see truly what's going on a real-time basis. And you go look at things like revenue. We're looking back at the past 5 years, and Ben, I'm sure you've seen this across the board as well, that yeah, you've got up years, you've got down years, and there's some big spikes and there's some really low points. But if you draw the trend line like right through the middle, the trend line is trickling down. Revenue is not in a great spot when you go look at all in every organization across the industry. The average is that revenue is going down, and this does not account for like inflation adjusted dollars. This is just dollar for dollar. You go add inflation into the mix, and I mean, you see the cost of
Well, everything is down then.
right. Yeah, it
Eggs
seems
and milk, eggs and milk.
right. So add eggs and milk into the equation here, and we're even if you're flat, you're down, right? Because it costs more to do the same amount of work that you did last year, this year. And so we're in a concerning place here. And there's a lot of contributing factors. Some of them are that we're losing active donors, generally speaking, especially the last 3 years. You draw the 5-year trend, and because there was such an explosion of donors at the end of 2020 and then into 2021, we're up over the 5-year, but the last 3 years it's been, the trend is trickling down, and we're seeing that not just at AVID, but it's across the industry. Giving USA reports very similar things as giving behaviors are shifting. So a lot of cases, a lot of organizations are seeing fewer donors giving more, which is kind of leading to that flat revenue. But there's obviously concerns buried in there. And then the big one that I keep talking about all the time in almost every single presentation I've given for the past 2-3 years is that retention is down. And it's easy for us to just think that retention is flat, right? Because it's a slow trickle. And as we look in on it year over year, we're saying, oh, it's kind of what it was last year. No concerns there. But you go draw these longer trend lines, and it's mostly down. We saw a little bit of an uptick in 2023, and then it fell back down in 2024. And 2025 has not turned around.
Well,
So
and it's a stacking loss, right? That's the problem. And it's like a slow burn, and you only feel it when you see it at the macro over 5 years.
yeah. So there's all these kind of concerns in the trends, even just at this macro level. Ben, are you seeing anything contrary to this in some of the organizations you're working with? Or
No, we see that, and it's yes, it is a. What I don't want the audience to hear is that it's okay, everybody is down. It's an activity based thing. It's causal. Part of it is a lack in activity to get things that drive retention, right? It's the execution to drive retention, and it's the execution to things that impact retention, like second gifts in the first year, things like that we can help these numbers organizationally. So I want everybody out there is like, yes, you're not alone, but also that doesn't have to be you.
Yeah, yeah, that's such a good word. I think when we look at benchmarks, it's so easy to just, even if you're right on track with the benchmark, to say, oh, then we're fine because we're like everybody else. But that complacency is what leads to further
More
decline,
down. Yeah.
right? Yeah. I'd be curious from anyone that's joining us and watching, jump in the chat, whether you're on LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you're at, and let us know what you think of these metrics, what you think of these kind of trends, and maybe where you're at. Are you seeing similar things? Or are you maybe beating the trends, or maybe worse? We'd love to know all your thoughts and ideas kind of as we go through here. Should we talk about some monthly giving trends?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I dove into our data. I pulled out. There's a lot we could pull, right? There's a ton of data. I pulled like the top 5, I think, interesting things going on in monthly giving, in recurring giving, starting at the top, which is just, what's the overall trend in terms of growth, and growth being measured as a percentage of the active donor file. I mean, if we just threw raw numbers in here and how many total people are recurring donors, it wouldn't really paint us a nice picture of an accurate picture of what's really going on. So we're looking at percentage of file. And you saw in 2020 through 2022 into 2023, there's this kind of steady growth happening. A lot of people, in terms of percentage of file, shifting over to recurring giving. Some of those are new people coming in the door as recurring donors. Some of those are existing donors that are upgrading. We saw that start to fall back down a little bit in 2024, which I think is interesting. And so I just wanted to call that out, that recurring giving was growing. I would say it is growing. I'm sure that as we get into 2025 data and beyond, we're still going to see the long-term trend up and to the right. Mm-hmm. But I just don't want us to become complacent and say, oh, everyone's naturally just giving more recurring gifts. We're going to be fine. That's just the way of the future. We can't let go of the intentionality. We have to bring intentionality to the table, which is what we're going to dive into today. I'm really excited to see more of your data and what you've discovered in your whole research process about what people are really doing today. But we have to be intentional if we want to continue to see it grow. And there's a lot of reasons we want to see it grow, right? Very simple things. Obviously, by nature, recurring donors give more frequently because they're automatically giving every single month. You give a credit card every month. You're effectively like subscription type of giving comes out. So we expect that, right? But I want to call this out because I just had a conversation a week or so ago on another webinar, another presentation, where someone called this out and said, well, if someone becomes a recurring donor, but they're giving at the same level, I'm actually losing money, right? Because then I pay more on every transaction for credit card fees and whatever. And so I just want to make sure it's not lost on anyone that as we talk about recurring giving, the goal is not to take $100 a year donor and just take their one gift and divide it into 12.
No, it's lifetime value. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we have to make sure that's at the forefront of these strategies. If someone's going to normally give a $100 gift, maybe we ask them to give a $25 gift every month because it's a lot more manageable in somebody's budget to do that than to say, yeah, give $100 every month. Obviously, we're asking for a percentage of what they would normally give, but it has to lead to growth, right? So related to that, you go look at revenue per donor. For this to be effective and successful, this is what we have to see is this type of trend. So a non-recurring donor on average, and there's a lot of variance here, right? But a non-recurring donor on average gives about $93 on an annual basis. A recurring donor gives $220 on an annual basis. So those small monthly gifts, they need to outpace those larger one-time donations. That's what we're seeing on the average. But if you've resisted moving into a recurring giving investment, this is the mindset that we need to take, is these donors should be driving greater revenue and greater value than just your one-time donor, not just dividing the gift by 12. A couple other kind of quick hits here as it relates to retention, because we just pointed that out as a really critical metric that's falling, right? By nature, again, these types of donors tend to retain a lot more effectively. They have a lot stronger retention rate than a non-recurring donor or kind of a one-time donor. And even in some previous research I had done the past couple of years when I was on the NextAfter team, right? We were doing kind of a deep dive into cultivation, and we were looking at retention rates and that sort of thing. And I kind of thought when we did that study that we would see sort of a smoking gun, if you will, related to retention, that if you just have recurring donors, then you have better retention rates. But the reality was it's a blend and it's a mix of, yes, you want a strong recurring giving program, but it also has to be paired with an emphasis on long-term impact and long-term value in your messaging. Because there's a lot of examples of organizations that have a lot of recurring donors, but they don't retain because their messaging is about, they're pulling people in from a emergency response type of appeal or a disaster relief appeal without a long-term vision. So it doesn't just happen magically.
Or just heavy incentive based, like to get them on and going. But then as soon as that, like the glamour of that wears off, all of a sudden they lapse.
Right. Yeah. And we've all been there, right? We give those things when emergencies happen, and even get into things like policy changes and whether you're in advocacy groups and spaces like that. There are lots of different applications for how you can bring people in the door in kind of a crisis urgency situation. But we have to then transition to the long-term impact. One more stat here, just kind of state of the union, if you will. Upgrade rates. I think this is a commonly missed stat and a commonly missed opportunity here with recurring donors, that they actually are so much more likely to upgrade their giving level. And what I'm talking about here is not just going from $100 to $120 in an annual giving, but moving from like a broad-based donor to a mid-level donor, or from a mid to a major. They're a lot more likely than a non-recurring donor to actually upgrade. So this should actually start to then fuel your pool of who you're targeting in those kind of upgrade communications, who maybe is making it onto the list for a gift officer to go reach out to and start to cultivate and have deeper conversations with. So I wanted to put that out there because, again, I think it's a missed opportunity in a lot of cases, and something that's kind of living in the data that not everyone knows about, and we should know about it because there's big opportunity here. So that's what I've started to see in the data, kind of at a high level. We could dive into some more like deeper things. Do you want to talk? I showed you some stats earlier. Do you want to talk about like branded programs and things?
Yeah, let's hear a little bit about the branded stuff, and then we can dive into the research study.
That sounds good. So there's a lot of thought out there. There are so many industry experts that are all talking about recurring giving right now, and everybody has unique takes and unique ideas, and there's a lot of value in listening to different perspectives and voices. And this is one I want to throw into the mix here, because A lot of times when, I've talked to fundraisers who are trying to get started with recurring giving, it feels like in some cases there's kind of a barrier to entry that's perceived that I have to have a big branded program and I have to package all these incentives and kind of products around it, if you will. And
Barrier entry is right. Like it paralyzes people from getting into the program space, which is necessary,
yeah,
versus like saying like I can't do it. I can't do something that's necessary because of something that's perceived necessary. And I think we'll see that in the data of like,
yeah. And that's not to say that there's not opportunity here,
yeah,
lean into a branded program or to build out, larger kind of like monthly giving, recurring giving products and incentives, if you will. But that doesn't mean you can't start.
right.
And I just want to show a few quick examples. Do you really need to go build a whole brand around it? The answer, it might not. It's not a requirement. Is basically the point I want to make, and show you these examples. So this is a higher ed organization. They also have kind of a media arm, if you will. I'm not going to dive into the all the nitty gritty of how they position their recurring giving, but the short of it, their primary call to action is to go become a monthly partner. That's not a very branded program. Sometimes you might
I would
throw
say that's unbranded. Yeah.
it's unbranded. They use consistent language, but it's not a brand. But look at the data. You've got steady growth in recurring giving revenue. You've got steady growth in active recurring donors. So it's not just a group of people that keeps giving more and more. Like, you're actively bringing new people into the fold. And this is a well-established organization as well. So that's one example. Not a branded program, seeing lots of growth. Here's another organization, a lot newer, younger of an organization. Their primary call to action, again, it's not branded, it's just give monthly, right? Nothing complicated about that. Now, they're surrounding that with a lot of value proposition, which I know you're going to talk about, Ben, as to why you should become a recurring donor. What's the impact? What's the additional impact that makes beyond just giving one time? But look at their growth rates. They're tremendous. Okay, they saw a dip in 2024. That happens, but look at the overall trend is huge, and their active recurring donors are rapidly growing as well. You go one more example, and then I'll hand the reins over to you to dive into what you've seen in your research, because I'm excited to get there. But this is a human services organization, and same type of story. Call to action, give monthly. Look at their recurring revenue growing year after year after year. Again, you've got some peaks and valleys, ups and downs, but the trend is significantly up over the 5-year. And active recurring donors, total number of people jumping in and saying, yeah, I want to give monthly without any other kind of branding around it, is rapidly growing. So I throw that out there because, again, there's a lot of perspectives, there's a lot of ideas, and I just don't want that to be a barrier to entry for you to think that, oh, I can actually just go ask. I can just go make a compelling reason why someone should become a recurring donor, and I might start to see some really meaningful results. And then I can build on that over time. I could build a brand around it. I could build a larger community. I could add some different incentives to add a little bit more gas to the fire, if you will.
Yes. That's
But
exactly, that point is really good in the sense of like, don't try to start something like having a branded program that doesn't have any steam, just a brand without something around it, to me is way less valuable than building a program, than building the brand around it in many cases.
yeah,
Right. So it's obviously more valuable financially, right? You have people that are giving recurring, and you build a brand around that program versus like you have this branded program that you're putting dollars behind, but
yeah,
nobody's in it.
right.
That in the brand in and of itself is not going to drive the dollars. It's the program, it's the tactics, it's the execution of it that's going to drive the dollars, and then you can build the brand to be a force multiplier on top of it.
100%,
So
100%, right there with you.
that's
So that's what we're seeing in the data. There's a lot more we could dive into, but I know we got a lot of research to get into.
oh,
So
that's great. That sets the stage perfectly because we're going to hit and add some more color commentary to about everything that you just said. So thank
cool.
you for sharing that, and
Yeah,
that was Rockstar. So let's dive into the study of how to acquire more recurring donors. We're going to talk about some data and responses and things that we saw as donors. And then we're going to give you some tips on what to do and how we can go there. So the whole goal is like, how do we demystify what it takes to begin acquiring monthly recurring donors? How do we do exactly what the market says we need to be doing? And how can we give you some free stuff, to just go start doing it? This year, what we did for our recurring giving research study, we donated to roughly 140 organizations, which lines up almost perfectly to your sample size of what you were just showing in those. And that equates to nearly 600 gifts. Now the next question is, well, what kind of organizations? Because everybody wants to be an outlier, right? But if you look at it, the types of organizations are across the board, from faith-based to animal welfare to everything in between. And then you're saying, oh, but I'm a smaller organization. Does this apply to me? Or, oh, I'm a bigger organization. Does this apply to me? Yes. Blanket, yes. Everything from your $1 million organization to your 100 million plus organizations. We tried to cover the gamut to where all of you sitting there can say, yes, this applies to me. Yes, this can be valuable to my organization, regardless of your organization's intent, mission, size, any of that. Well, what did you do? Well, here's what we did. We have two different personas that we donated from. One was a single gift. And if they offered us an upgrade potential, we did upgrade a month post to the single gift to a $20 monthly donor to recurring. And then the second persona we started. If they offered us and asked us to be a monthly donor in the beginning, we gave as a monthly donor. And we focused on messages received in the first 90 days of becoming a donor. And looked at what channels across email, mail, phone, and text, what messages came through each of those channels. And these are their stories. So some additional benchmarking. This just highlights kind of the stuff that Nathan was saying too. When you look at this, right, the retention rate of recurring donors and previously recurring donors versus one-time donors is staggering, right? So in here, like, it does matter. Like, it does matter whether we are recurring or not. It does matter. Like, there is value to getting recurring because it does help with retention rate. Now, to Nathan's point, just being recurring on its own without building a value proposition on top of that, you still have lapse, right? Even previously recurring 62%, right? That's not anywhere close to 100%, even 83%. You're still having significant attrition on there from people that are quote unquote bought in, giving you dollars every single month.
Yeah.
So cultivation still matters. All of these things still matter. It's not just a growth in retention rate, but it is still opportunity to build even from there.
I love that middle stat that you have, the previously recurring, to just show the impact, the long-term impact that someone being a recurring donor, even for a time, still has on their commitment to the organization. Like,
and it's training, right? Like, if you were going to the gym every day, every week for 3 years, and say you stopped for a bit, the point is, when you get back into it, it's kind of like you're way more likely to get back into it. You're way more likely to keep going in some shape or form versus someone that's never gone, right? On a regular basis.
Yeah.
That's going once a year, twice a year, right? So it's building that muscle memory. It's building a lot of these things. How are you defining a recurring donor in your study? Someone that's giving monthly. Kind of set gifts occurring on a regular basis, not just someone that's giving a one-time gift multiple times throughout the year. It is a recurring sort of auto pay gift, if you will.
Yeah, that the automatic payment is simple there. So they could be, I assume, I mean, I'm making assumptions here, but they could be giving every single month, sending a check in, and that wouldn't qualify necessarily as
recurring. Yeah, because they could technically, just recurring, they could stop anytime as well, but they're less likely. That is how the differentiation between multi-time gift donors versus recurring is defined. So let's look at what happened when we gave to these folks, right? Let's look how optimized or not people are in this. So when we look at here, let's see. This one seems like a no-brainer.
This is my favorite number. I'm so excited.
Let's see if we were able to donate. We would say that this should be 100%, right? But nearly 1 in 10 nonprofits can't accept a recurring gift online. Right? So when we're looking at this, like, it's really hard to grow that number if you can't grow the number. So that's the first thing. When we look at it here, like, monthly giving option right on the homepage, right? So in here, if we can't see on the homepage an option, right? If we don't focus on it right out of the start, we're not likely to grow something there. So 25% of organizations include a monthly donate option on the homepage. And so, Nathan, we would say, like, does that really matter? Well, let's test it, right? In true fashion, we look at this example from Save the Children, this test. The only difference, right, was having your typical donate right? Raise your hand if your donate button on your homepage looks like this on the left, right on the control. And then we had a treatment on the right, which is give monthly. That was it, right? We test things in isolate. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of oofs and no's on the ability to give online. But here we go. The treatment. Just add the give monthly button. Put a focal point of give monthly on there. 45% increase in donor conversion. You'll notice that doesn't just say recurring donor conversion. There's a halo effect on giving in general by having that on there. So it's important. I saw there was another question on the right here. Should the end goal be to develop a brand, or do you think we're good staying at communicating the effect of monthly giving as well? I think it's both. It depends on a couple things. One, can you do something effectively? Do you have the resources to do something effectively? And is there a value add by doing the branded option? Right. So, yes, if you can, no, if you can't. Like, just build the program fundamentally. And then if you can build brand around it, that's great. Sometimes the community forms around the thing, sometimes the thing forms around the community. So I think there's no hard stance on that. I think that there is value to building a brand on top of it once you have a solid program, but it's not a full stop like barrier to entry for sure, and not a barrier to success in the long term.
I mean, maybe I'm over fixating here, but that's just the term end goal. Like the goal is not to build a brand. The goal is impact, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to have then the layer to go measure how what we're doing is fueling impact. And if we can test our way into how does overlaying, a branded community actually leading to greater impact, cool. But that's not the end goal. The end goal is how do we go figure out the best way to actually grow giving? It might be by building that brand community for sure, but we have to have a clear measurement as to where we're going.
Yeah, the end goal is the value of building the brand, not just building a brand.
Yeah.
Let's look at tabbed donate buttons. Tabbed donate buttons on the donation page itself. 64% of organizations included tabbed donate buttons on the donation page. Now, at NextAfter, we've launched a lot of these type of studies. This is a thing for us. So when I say 64%, I would say the stat, I would almost qualify it as only 64%, because there's a lot of data that shows the value of this. For example, like if we just do option A, the control versus the tabbed donation form, just by having the tabbed form versus the checkbox, we saw a 15% increase in donations there. If you look at this one, when we look at no monthly option versus having the recurring monthly option right there, 0 recurring donors, obviously, because we're not offering it, versus 8 within 2 weeks, right? Just by adding the option in the tab form. So again, to me, those two things of one, on the donation, having a monthly option right on your homepage, and then on the donation page, making sure that it's really easy and very visible, you can see like that's super low hanging fruit, right? Dedicating recurring giving donation page, right? Only 32%, which is not surprising when you look at the only 64% have it on the donation page itself. Only 32% of organizations have a dedicated recurring giving page. And then if we look at here, copy, right? 42% of organizations include some copy about recurring donations. This is an area where I think we're lacking. And this is that whole focal point thing, right? Of like, if we look at it, that really means less than 50%, less than half the organizations included in here included copy on the main donation page to encourage ongoing support. Before we're building brand, let's build the value, right? What is the value of becoming a monthly partner? What is the value of becoming giving regularly? One of the things I bet you when we looked at those, the programs and the branded research that you shared, they had, I would almost assume that they had great copy on there around the value proposition of why give monthly, why become a monthly partner. To me, that matters more than the brand name that you give the program is the reason why to be there. Here's an example, right? If we look at the control here, this one has the monthly gift option, right? But this one just added a little bit of copy. We're not talking voluminous amounts of value prop. We're just talking about a couple lines of why they should give monthly, almost a 30% increase, right? So in there, it's like, why not add some value of terms of like, what does this do, right? Just adding, if you saw the last things, yes, I said, add the tab, all that type of stuff. Yeah, there's value to it. But if you add a little bit of value proposition around why they should become a monthly partner, there's a tremendous amount. That's a great question, Elliot. Should they sorry, I think should they default to monthly giving tab? There's a lot of research around that too. You can look at our library of experimentations on there, but I think Nathan, you've done a lot of research in that space too, and a lot of says there's a lot of value to defaulting to that space.
Yeah,
Um,
especially if I mean, and this is just kind of marketing 101, but like if your call to action on the ad before it or the banner before it or the email before it is to drive towards a monthly gift, 100%. That page should be about monthly giving, at minimum defaulted, but maybe also just that's the only option is to go give a monthly gift if
yep,
that's what drove them there. Outside of that, if you're just driving a general donation ask, that's test that so that
yep.
for you and in your world, right? Because it can have some variance
I'd
there.
A/B test that for sure.
Mhm.
Now, what happens if you add a little bit more? So that had just a couple lines, but this one we added a couple more things around value proposition of why to become a monthly partner and some specific language around recurring giving, right? So let's really build the value proposition there. That was huge. So we saw almost 140% increase specifically in recurring donations. And all I'm here to say is one, yes, test and experiment around optimization of length, bullets, personal X, Y, and Z. But there's a lot of data that shows us we should be exploring adding value prop to recurring and making sure that people can opt into it.
Mhm.
One of the other things we looked at uh, was, and this was actually good. I think 71% of organizations offer ACH payment for recurring donations. And why is that important, Nathan?
Oh, it's so important, Ben, because the average lifetime of someone's bank account is a heck of a lot longer than the average lifetime of their credit card. That thing might get canceled in like 8 to 12 months once they got the bonus rewards and all that stuff. They're going to throw that thing away, whatever. Then you just lost their recurring gift. Got to get them on ACH.
Exactly. And here's the data to prove that. Defaulting to credit card versus defaulting to ACH. Big test results here.
Roll.
No change. Right? So in there,
You're seeing a bunch of like 300%
yeah.
lift. It feels like a womp womp. But this
But
is huge.
this is huge, right? So there's no negative friction to defaulting to ACH. All that you have is positive upside because at the least, how many of like I think there's probably two or three cards of mine that will expire over the next 12 to 18 months. So if I don't know that I'm not keeping track of everything on that card and all, especially nowadays where everything's linked to these cards, right?
Mhm.
Just default to ACH and you see an option there. Here's a big one, and here's where we start to get into the stuff of like, guys, we have the ability to do better, right? 14% recurring gift ask on the thank you page. Now, this one is like when we present stuff like this, people are always like, oh, because it gives them cringy moment of like, but wait, that's counterintuitive. We just asked them for money. They just gave us money. We're going to ask them for something else, right? 14% of people did that, right? But it's kind of one of those found money things. And it is behavioral economics. There's a lot of psychology to it. Like I just hit that give button. I have that huge dopamine, like that huge rush of like feeling great. So I have the most positive feelings of generosity right after I do that. So it does kind of make sense that there'd be a halo effect. We tried it. You make a serial ask. You just ask for an additional gift right on the confirmation page, and we saw 25% of people actually giving a gift on that confirmation page right after they had given. Right, that's on the confirmation page. Um, in
I mean,
here,
there's a
you could
reason
ask for an upgrade too.
There's a reason why when you go buy something on Amazon or any other e-com site, like you see all the recommended other products that you might want to buy in addition to it throughout the process, as well as after you actually make the purchase. And as much as I usually hate comparing you giving and fundraising to e-commerce because they're not the same.
No,
There's also a lot there to learn from, right? To go optimize these processes. And
yeah,
you have that big dopamine hit before you've even given, right? Before you've actually made the transaction, because you've leaned into the cause. And so now you have this opportunity as someone kind of leans in with all the warm fuzzies in their heart about giving, even maybe before they hit the donate button to even prompt for an upgrade too. So lots of room for testing in there.
I'm glad you said it because 30% of organizations include a recurring donation interrupter or a pop up, meaning, and this is one people will maybe like bite for that last one, right? But this one is people are like, wait, this goes against a lot of people's thoughts or their assumed best practice, right? Meaning, like, I'm about to give. What's the last thing that most people think that they should do, which is induce some sort of friction into the process, right? People are like, oh, but like we want to make it seamless, one click give, that type of stuff. But wait, right? 30% of people, only a third of the organizations included a recurring donation pop up, right? But what happens? So this one, all we did was include this donation interrupter, right? So before we process your gift, they clicked give now, right? They already clicked give now. They were committed to giving. But before we process your gift of $50, will you consider bringing the gospel to lost 365 days a year? And they gave an option to, yes, convert my gift to a little bit lower amount, $10 monthly gift, versus no thanks, go ahead and process my original one-time gift. Drum roll, 288% increase in monthly donation.
We'll take that. Wow.
Adding a little bit of friction in there, right? Which people naturally are likely to be like, they click the give button, just like go process the payment.
Yeah.
But here, wouldn't you like 288% more increase in monthly donations, right?
100%. Even if you're taking a loss on the one time, which I'm not sure what the data is in this experiment exactly, but I know a lot of these don't tend to impact one-time giving or overall conversion generally. But even if you did take a slight loss, based on what we just saw in overall retention rates and overall, like, you would take this win every day.
Yeah. And yeah, most of the stuff shows that you're not seeing a decrease in one time because they'll go ahead and click the no thanks, give me the one time. It's not averting them from actually giving their initial intent.
Yeah.
So what happens after they became a donor? We covered a lot of stuff there on like how to become a donor, but what do they send someone afterward, right? In this, here's what we got through our gifts and through our 140 organizations. We saw 147 direct mail pieces, 1,500 emails, 18 voicemails, and only 13 text messages. I think that is an interesting piece there. When we look at this, what you send versus how you send it is more important. But also, when we're seeing these numbers out of 600 gifts and 140 organizations, these numbers should be way higher, right? Let's look at this. This one is going to be one of those cringe moments, folks. And hopefully everyone can point to themselves and say, not my organization. But org sending a receipt and a thank you, right? So if I'm giving a recurring gift, this is someone that's committed to giving a recurring gift, becoming a recurring donor. Only 62% of organizations sent the recurring donor a receipt and a thank you, right? So sent them the automated receipt and a follow-up thank you on there. Wow. This may be why we're seeing that slow trickle down in the numbers that you shared, Nathan, right?
And it's not, the sad thing here is it's not new. Like, it's not like, oh, somebody's platform broke, in the middle of your research. Like, this has been an ongoing trend for years. And I think it's actually, surprisingly, it's gotten better. Like, this is a good number comparatively, which makes it even more sad. I mean, there's so much of this basic blocking and tackling that's just not being done. And we could chalk it up to broken technology, broken processes. I don't think it's a lack of strategy. I think everybody knows we should do this. There's an assumption that sometimes it's working, or the lack of it, of having the resources to have the infrastructure to do this at scale. So definitely some big problems to solve there to get this to 100%, which is where it should be.
Yeah. I mean, 38% of nonprofits aren't sending a dedicated thank you message. So that's an issue. Wow. Then when we go, what happens afterwards? So there's a 53% chance that after 2 months, organizations will not acknowledge the ongoing support. So every time you go to buy something, every time you go to the gas station, every time I commit a transaction, I'm offered a receipt at the least, right? And some sort of communication after that. So as an organization, let's get up to 100% that every transaction we're getting something there. Now, you're trying to do maybe quarterly or yearly statements and summaries. That's fine. But the donor's dollar doesn't become less valuable over time to us. In fact, it becomes more valuable, right? Customer acquisition cost goes down over time. Lifetime value goes up. So over time, let's continue to really be good stewards of that dollars and send them recognition for their support. Asking for an increase in recurring gift. Only 27% of organizations asked for an increase in the recurring gift within the first 90 days. Which this is one of those things, there's a lot of data of when it comes to One-time gifts, right? Having that second one-time gift within the first 12 months increases retention, like for sure double digits, multiple double digits, probably 50, 60+%. We have that data somewhere. Same thing in recurring. Like there's an opportunity here to increase your recurring gift within those first 90 days. But you won't do it if you don't ask for it. So cultivation, you talked a lot about cultivation and the value of cultivation here. 68% of organizations are cultivating recurring donors within the first 90 days. So within the first 3 months, am I getting some sort of communication that doesn't have a direct ask in it, right? Am I getting something that builds relationship, something that ascends transaction, and something that's giving me value back for the value that I'm giving you, the organization, right, Nathan? So almost 70% of organizations are doing that. And that's great. I think this has probably increased over time as well,
Yeah.
over the years. And most of those organizations, those emails were around, newsletters, stories of impact, videos. Those are great. One of the things that we like to use and one of the things we like to test in those cultivation series are responses, right? Direct, not direct response, but a response, direct reply. So inviting some sort of response from a donor. Right now, we saw only about 35% of organizations are inviting the recurring donor to respond back. That's me sending more of a personal email. Hey, Nathan, thanks for being a program, being part of our become a monthly donor program. We'd love to hear from you. What are some of the things that we can be praying about for you? Or what are some of the things that you've experienced as X, Y, and Z? Just reply to me on this email, right? Versus click a link, go to this, fill out a form. It's just a direct reply. And the question here, like you were saying, is like, does this really matter? Do cultivation emails have an impact? And we tested that, right? So included, the hypothesis is what Nathan and I are just saying. We've seen the data, but yeah, including an additional cultivation email into the appeal schedule, we believe that increases both conversion and revenue. So to test that, obviously, we just looked at 50-50 split, one additional cultivation email per week, right? So and it's important to note, the client that we tested this on didn't want to stop any of the appeal emails. So this was literally like they were sending
Why would you? It's making the money.
Yep. So let's add an additional, right? Let's really add comms in here. So over the next 6 months, let's add an additional cultivation email per week. And so no addition versus 50% of the list got the additional cultivation email, 41% increase, not just in response or anything like that, but in revenue. 41% increase in revenue by that additional cultivation.
And I know that somebody is, if they're going to ask it, they're thinking it is, well, what did you do to unsubscribes? Should we talk about that for a moment? Because
yeah,
more emails, there's a higher cadence. And I know that's a fear for a lot of people is like, well, okay, is it a short-term gain? Because then I'm losing subscribers. And I always like to tell people, like unsubscribe is one of the best metrics you have for someone to choose how they want to engage with you. And we shouldn't optimize for the unsubscribe or the lack thereof. We should optimize for these metrics because this is going to grow into the future. And you still have their contact info in their email. You can contact them in so many other ways, even outside of just other drip cultivation through advertising and all sorts of other things to re-engage them, bring them back into the fold. So for
which
any
is possible. Yes. People also, the nature of today, unsubscribes are becoming more fickle, right? There's a lot of times, there's certain, even on the e-commerce side, specifically, I'd say on the e-commerce side, I'll subscribe to something, unsubscribe. It's the nature of that, the cycle, the natural sort of rhythm of that is changing and evolving. So that's not the sole metric. I would say I would definitely look at a 41% increase in revenue of those people over that unsubscribe rate. Now, it's not important. We're not saying that, but it's not the sole metric.
If you see a giant spike, okay, concern there.
Yeah, let's dial it back. But I would say, in a way, that teaches you, let's dial back some of the appeals and mix in some cultivation.
100%. Yeah.
What about this? Are they actually asking their one-time donors to upgrade to recurring, right? So first of all, a little less than half of the organizations are actually sending a thank you email and a receipt when they make a one-time gift, right? So that's a problem. So I'm not surprised when we see 36% of organizations asking one-time donors to upgrade to ongoing support within the first 30 days. Again, when is the most important time? to make some of these asks, it's right in that moment of truth, that moment of like generosity, those feelings. When's the next point? Soon after that, right? So within those first 30 days, um, if we look at it making additional one-time gift, right? 55% of organizations are asking one-time gift donors to make an additional one-time gift within the first 30 days. And we have study after study after experiment that shows how important that is to retention, right? There's magnitudes of increase in retention, year-to-year retention, if you have someone that's made an additional one-time gift that first year, let alone if you can get that in that first 30 days is the best window there.
Yeah.
So what do we look like when it comes to lifetime value, right? So if you have someone that started as recurring, right, lifetime value $602 versus converting to recurring, almost $1,000. So 65% increase in lifetime value if we could get them to go to recurring from there, right? It's not the only metric, but
That's yeah. Can we camp there for a second? Like put that slide back because we should make sure people really get that. You're looking at on the left, these are people that their first gift was a recurring gift. On the
yes,
right, you're looking at people who their first gift was a one-time gift. They're cultivated,
converted to recurring.
they're upgraded. And the value is 65% more if you can bring them into the door, cultivate them, warm them up, win their trust and build a relationship before you ask for that recurring gift. That's a finding right there, my friend.
I think also it kind of harkens back to the whole notion of branded thing, right? So yes, the branding thing, but not starting with some sort of like brand. It's not going to hold you back in this way either, because these are people that gave one time and converted up to something that's not necessarily, I would venture to say, like, that's not just a branded program that does this. This is just the ask and getting them to do it. It's the practice of it. Throw that question back up there real quick, guys. How do you define cultivation emails? I've heard arguments that invitations to public events that we're hosting or tabling at our cultivation. We define cultivation as no ask for some action. Cultivation is without an ask, without a CTA on it, right? Or without an ask on it. There is a CTA, like a reply back to us or something like that, but not an ask. Nathan, how do you guys define that? Is that similar?
Yeah, that's how I've kind of always looked at it. I know depending on what you're trying to study, we might redefine it a little bit differently. But yeah, generally, if it's not asking for money, it's quote unquote cultivation. But I to that question about like invitations to public events, if that's your only form of cultivation, I would highly recommend you consider other forms of cultivation as well.
Yeah.
Not everybody can come to a public event. Not everyone wants that type of engagement, but they still probably want to be in the know on what's going on, what's happening, how's their giving, or even just their like emotional support, impacting the cause. So I
And
would
reassurance that their gift matters. I would say that a lot of people, and this is purely assumptive, I don't have the data, but it feels like a lot of people, donors, are probably less convinced that their donation matters over time. And so those cultivation emails reassure them that their gift matters. And I think in general, what I've seen, especially even in the faith space and things like that, is people don't realize the average size of gifts that make those impacts. A lot of people have this of like, if I'm not giving thousands of dollars, like I'm not making that impact. But really, when we look at the average gift sizes and stuff like that of recurring, like you're by definition, you're right in the middle, right? There's a high likelihood that you're right in the middle.
Well, we keep coming back to this brand concept too, but that's where the power of a branded community really comes in, is understanding that in mass, we have a lot of power to make impact, even if I can't give $1,000 gift or a $5,000 gift. I can only give $50, something like that. That's where all that kind of magic starts to come together when you build that community.
Yeah. Shout out AVID AI 2025 benchmark data right here. When we look at upgrade rate, this is something you just showed, right? When you look at the upgrade rate to mid and major, right? There's halo effect to this. This is one of those harder things to measure, but when you look at the potential upgrade rate, so from your broad base, right? One-time donors, you look at upgrade rate to mid to major, 0.1%, right? Not 0.1, 0.1% versus recurring donors, their rate to upgrade to a mid to major donor, 1.6%. Here's where you see the biggest increase stat. Smallest percentage, biggest increase, 1,500% upgrade rate when it comes to your recurring versus your one time, right? So this is the importance there. That's like when you look at it, that's found money, right? So if they're not there, they should be. So
Yeah.
let's try to get that going. And
I I
time.
know there's a lot of major gift driven organizations out there, or even mid and major gift driven organizations who might look at recurring giving as like, okay, that's nice, but it's a fraction of my revenue, it's a fraction of my impact. But that is just such an important signal to then go push over into your mid and major pipelines to understand how these people are driving your major giving pipeline of the future. That's huge.
Yeah, so when you're working with your, major gifts officers, those teams, and they're pushing for the importance of that, yes, but how do you feed that funnel? It's your broad-based program.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, your recurring donors are worth 9 times more over their lifetime. Lifetime value, right? You're spending money to build your program, spending money to acquire these new donors, move them into recurring, because that's how you get the lifetime value up, right? That's how you get over the cost. So we've covered a ton of data. We covered a ton of stuff, but what are some things we can do? Yes, you can reverse engineer the stuff we talked about it, but specifically, where are the focal points if you're trying to build and get into the positive side of what Nathan and I are talking about? First is this is like donors will upgrade if they trust that a monthly gift will make a unique lasting impact, right? Unique lasting impact is the thing. If you don't have the reasoning behind it, why they should become a monthly donor, um, then they're not just going to opt into it, right? You have to show them the value to it. So behind all of this is this principle, which is we have to show them, trust. We have to show them why monthly gift matters to the organization, why it should matter to them as the donor, and how it's going to make something that's ownable, uniquely identifiable for your organization that you can do better and uniquely set and qualified for, and how that's going to create a lasting impact. So what are some things we can do quickly? One is cultivation. We talked about it. Like, don't just, first of all, make sure that you're responding to them and giving a receipt and a thank you. But add cultivation into your email flow, right? Give them some value, engage with them as a human, right? Not just as an organization, and make sure that you're giving them value in between those asks. Again, like when we look at cultivation, like the numbers are there. We looked at this earlier, like 42% increase in online revenue through building cultivation emails. Another thing that we consider do is, again, we talked about the unique impact and the benefits. Why should I give monthly versus a one time or even at all? We looked at some of this study earlier when it comes to just even some benefits, like making sure that when we're making an ask, we're giving the benefits of why to become a monthly donor. And you see the results there, right? So one, make sure we have the value prop. Two, make sure that we're cultivating. Another thing here is the tangible goal for your campaign. This is one that we didn't show. Question: have you done any testing about offering gifts or special recognition, exclusive events? You're welcome for the information. Yes, we've done stuff about incentives. If you go to our library of experiments in there, I don't have the data right offhand. Maybe Nathan remembers something, but around incentive-based gifts and incentive-based programs, we do have a ton of research in there. If you go to nextafter.com/research, you can type in some of those into our Winston, and you can see all of that type of stuff.
Yeah, I've not seen like a lot of specific testing on, incentive offers inside of like cultivation for recurring. Like you're
Yeah.
getting really narrow specific there, but incentives across the board, those are effective to help drive an action, and those can be really effective cultivation pieces as well. So it's something you almost don't even need to test. That goes into how do you go help build trust and build the relationship with these recurring
Yeah.
givers.
When you're trying to build this, one thing that we haven't talked about, but is an important way that we've seen a lot of good data around, is the goals for the campaign, goals for monthly giving. Like adding some of this around, like instead of will you become a new monthly donor, it's saying will you become one of the new 48 monthly donors that we need, right? We've done some tests around what revenue goals are versus a number of donors goal, right? So this one is saying, hey, we need to raise $100,000 by the end of the year. The treatment was saying we have a goal of 92 new donors to step forward. And we saw a significant increase of almost 40% increase in donations by repositioning that way. This is not an answer. This is something to explore and to test how you want to position those things. But adding some sort of goal there, people are goal minded, right? So if you can set the parameters of what you're needing or what you're searching for, that's super helpful. Uh, One of the other principles that we wanted to talk about of what you can start doing is urgency. To that point, you can add a date, right? So when we looked at this, we looked at yes, you need 479 monthly donors by this date. And just by adding the date, we saw another increase there. So urgency around the appeal, some sort of quantity or goal around the appeal is really interesting. Um, the last thing I wanted to touch on is what do we do when we get to the donation page? We talked a lot about how do we get them there. What do we do to optimize it? But what do you do when you get to the donation page? So things that we talked about as a recap, um, defaulting to monthly gift options. Someone asked that earlier, right? Having the default to a monthly gift and making that clear throughout the copy. This one is pretty staggering. When we looked at the control versus adding the buttons and defaulting to recurring, um, it's kind of no surprise, but we saw a huge increase in donations there. This is just going. This is a lot of things right. Rather than the radio, it's optimized for mobile. When it comes to the bigger buttons, it's defaulting to recurring. It's tabbed. All of this stuff. So when you optimize it, if you implement some of these things that we talked about throughout the program today, there's a lot of good that can happen. The second thing on your donation page is, again, the unique value prop. This is something that we showed earlier, and obviously the subsequent increase there. A third thing is custom gift array. If your donor platform, if your donation platform can do this, there's a lot of value in adding the ability to do a custom donation array. Um, and you need the data to do that. That's where stuff like AVID, that's where stuff like making sure that all your systems are talking to each other. You can only do that if you're have your systems that are aligned and talking to each other. Anything else that you want to add around custom gift arrays, Nathan?
Oh, I mean, I know you got a couple of things to go to through, and we're getting close on time. But yeah, I mean, custom gift arrays. Even I know it's not a tested tactic you have here, but being able to go customize those pages in the copy intelligently based on what you know about your donors is like that. That is not just the future; that's the present. That's where things are going right now to keep up with growing donor expectations. And so we have to get to this point where we're using some additional tool, like AI-driven tools, to go understand where people are at, customize things like gift arrays, but also then the copy on the page for different segments, and ultimately trying to get closer to that one-to-one type
Yeah.
of experience.
Yeah. And you can only do that if your tech stack is working and speaking to each other. That's what's cool about. That's why we love Avid. Plug, shameless plug.
Thank
We'll be
you.
able to do that. If you can't do that, at least have a pre-selected recommended gift amount, right? So in there, a lot of donation platforms for at the least will let you do this. So, having just a simple thing of this is the most popular or this is recommended. We saw a noticeable amount increase in donations. I'd take 30% increase in donations from there. And last but not least, we talked about this defaulting to ACH, bank payment, all of that, like making sure that we're able to do the things and not have cancellations from just expired credit cards. We'll leave you with this. All the stuff that we talked about today, like there is no try, but there is test, right? Go do the things, but you can't test what you don't do. So go out there. You're not going to try to do everything that we talked about. We intentionally flooded you with a million things so you can pick one or two that are low hanging fruit for your organization. But go start testing, go do the things, take advantage of the stuff. Like maybe the first step is take advantage of one of the campaigns. That Nathan mentioned earlier. Take advantage of the stuff that's out there. You can get the full study. I know we covered a lot, but that's only like a quarter of what's in the study. If you use the QR code, you can download the full recurring giving benchmark study. There's a lot of data from NextAfter and AVID in there, like the benchmark stuff in there. And then we also are offering, if you use the code recurring course and you go to our recurring donor acquisition online course, you can get, I believe, Jason, remind me if it's 3 or 6 months. I think it's 3 months of 3 months of a free online course for recurring donor acquisition. I know we're almost at time. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the engagement. Hopefully, everybody learned something here that they can take back to their organization. If it's not, it's reassurance that you are part of the people that are doing the things, which is great. We love to see that. But hopefully, you're leaving here with a lot of information of like, hey, we're not alone in this. 2, you have partners here that are willing to help you. And 3, you have the capability to grow your program with some very achievable and attainable steps to get there. Nathan, my friend, my brother, really grateful for you, man. Thanks for taking the time to be here. Thanks for sharing everything. Thanks for making a great offer to the attendees here. Anything, I'll leave you with the last words. Anything you want to wrap up with?
Well, I'm just grateful to you all for doing this research. This is really, really important stuff for our industry and for our sector. And I think we're seeing in the data just how much need there is for more intentionality around this, everything from the measurement side by looking at our data holistically and together, all the way to the execution side. Because to do this stuff really well, we've got to find those resources and those tools that can help us move faster and do more with less. So really excited about how this study gives us some direction as to where we should be focused, and excited to see people put it to work, because looking at some of those stats that are a little bit scary, we want to see those grow, right? And I'm encouraged that more and more people are getting on board with how we use this data to turn it into action and drive results. So best of luck to everybody as you put this stuff into action. Even some small things can make really dramatic impact.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you here next time. Take care.
See y'all.